Okay, so let's continue on with what we were working with before. Make sure that you go ahead and open up your file. Make sure you have your toolbar open up, which is over here. Make sure you have your timeline open and visible. You might want to make sure you have your code snippet open up as well as your action script frame, and make sure that you're on ActionScript too. Make sure you have your properties panel open up that you can see that, and make sure you have your library open up, and you might also want to have your history panel open up so that you can go back in your history if you make any errors. So now we're going to talk about working with event handling function. This process of working with events is really not all that complex as you may think it is. So you write code that tells an object to listen to an event, and then you write a function that occurs in response to that event. So it's a little different than it was in ActionScript 1 and 2. In ActionScript CS5, we now have what is called a code snippet, which is right here. We've already been working with this a little bit. So over here you can see the code snippet, which has already some pre-established codes for you to work with. So the code snippet panel is really nice because it helps you to write the synapse to create a basic event listener. This panel also provides a terrific way to become familiar with the ActionScript syntax. So this is really a great way for you to learn how to do this. So working with event handling functions is basically just a process where you're listening to and responding to an event in an ActionScript, and it's actually a two-part process. One piece of the code is called the add event listener method, and this gives the instruction to listen for a specific event and a particular object. And the other piece of the code is called the event handler function, which responds to that event that takes place. So some things that you might want to use an event handling function for is when you display a menu when the user rolls over the button. You hide the menu when the user rolls off the button, or navigate to a frame on the timeline when the user clicks the button. So we're going to work with a little file here and work with this file and how to create event handling functions. So let's get started with this project. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place in a new button. So go ahead and select the buttons layer, which is over here in your timeline. You can see this right here. Make sure you select right in the first frame. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my library, and I'm going to drag out this button right down here. If you don't see it, you might have to scroll down and find it right here. Let's drag it out to the stage and kind of align it with your Flash support that you have here. Okay, now I'm going to go to the properties panel. I'm going to go down where it says components parameter. I'm going to change the name to home. And then I'm going to scroll back up again. I'm going to go back and I'm going to check it on the stage. Sometimes you have to really do that. And I'm going to change the instance name to home underscore button. So now I'm all set to start putting some ActionScript on my file. Okay, so we're going to add a code snippet for our navigation. The intended purpose of the home button is just to add to allow the user to jump to the frame of the timeline labeled home, which is here at frame 50. So you want to create this button, this home button. You want to give it some usability for your users. You want them to be able to click this button and go back to home. So what we need to do is have the code snippet open, which I do here. And you see if I select frame in the ActionScript, if I select the second frame, you will see that I already have a string of code right here in this frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to select my home button right here. And I'm going to go to the code snippet. And I'm going to click where it says click to go to frame and stop, because that's what I want. I want it to go to the home frame and I want it to stop. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that, double click it, and you see how it automatically creates a code for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change where it says go to and stop, and I am actually going to write home in here. Because it's better to use what you have written in your code, because this just makes it a lot easier for your file to use the label names instead of the frame numbers in your script. It makes it easier to make changes to the content in the frames of your timeline without having to modify your code. So use your frame labels in a go-to method by typing in the label name in quotations in the parentheses instead of the number 5. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to, I'm going to change just text here that is written here, and I'm just going to write in go home. And I'm going to write the same thing down here too. I'm going to simplify my file. This black text, you can change it to whatever you want to change. And this just makes it easier for me when I actually go back and I review this. I'm also going to get rid of all this gray text here. This is just instruction text. So this is just to help you and just to help you guide you through your file. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit. And let me just go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go to Control. I'm going to go to Test and Test. And then when I hit my home button, it's going to go home. Okay, so now we're going to change this home button to a restart button. So the first thing you need to do is select the right here where it says buttons, and on keyframe 50, insert a keyframe. Just go up to the timeline, insert timeline keyframe. I've already did this because it takes a while to write in all the code. So just insert timeline keyframe, and you're going to have a keyframe at on the buttons layer at 50. So let's just deselect this on the stage. Select the home button. I've had restart here, but I'm going to show you how you're going to go ahead and change this. So instead of being home and home button, we're going to call this restart button. So just write in the text restart, just like I'm doing right now. And the same thing up at the top. For instance, we're going to change to restart. And you're going to see your home button now on the stage change to a restart. So let's go ahead and put the code in. Now you got to make sure that you're at 50. And check the code here on the action frame. Now we're going to actually do this. We're going to write this in. So up at the top it should say info underscore text dot text equals welcome to the home frame. So you're going to write this exactly how it's written here. So we're going to write restart underscore button, and that's what we want, the restart button. And you're going to write, oh actually I see that I didn't spell it right, so let's just do this correctly. This should be R-E. We want this to look correct. Restart. Before we continue on, always check your spelling because it's really very easy to make errors in your spelling, especially when you're looking at Flash and you're looking at it on a small screen. If you're using a laptop, sometimes it can be very difficult to see. So let's go back here. So you're going to write restart underscore button, add event listener. So the event is when you click the mouse event dot click. You're going to go to start, and the function is go to start with mouse event. You have to write exactly how it's written. If you don't, then it's not going to write correctly. So how many times do we want to do it? We have to put in a condition, okay? So it's going to be 1 count. So you want to go to and play. So let's just take a look and see how this looks. You want go to and play loop. And loop is right up here. That is the start of our file. So let's just save this. Go up to the top, file, and save. Let's just check this. Control, test, test. So now you see the first one is the home, and we see the numbers that are playing 1 to 5. Now if I clicked home, see now it changes to restart instead of home. So I'm going to select right here. I can go home and it'll go back to restart. So maybe I don't want this to say home frame. You could put in restart if you want. You can change this. It really depends on you, but I'm going to just keep it to welcome to the home frame. So we're going to continue on here. We have like a couple of more sessions here to finish up with lesson 2. Okay, so let's do a little bit of alteration here. Right now, your text just, when you look with the movie, it just loops with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's make this a little bit better. Let's make it a little more accurate and give your user a little more feedback. So what you need to do is select right here in the ActionScript layer and on the second frame right here, and go up to your top where it has the info text in the string count right here. We're going to change this a little bit. So we're going to place, after the text, we're going to place the animation has played, just like in your book, okay? So you're going to go ahead and type that. Make sure you put the quotes in there. And we're going to keep the string in there, but we're going to put a plus sign before the string. So the plus sign, what the plus sign does too is it joins the text in the quotation mark with the value of the count variable and to form a sentence. So we put the plus mark there, and we keep string count as it is, and then we put another plus mark after it, like so, and we put in quotes the X, a dot, another quote, and I think that we got it all. Just double check and make sure that it's written correctly. And your book, sometimes it's easy to miss something. If you miss one little thing, it's not going to work. So let's just see how this looks. Okay, so now it's counting up. And then it's going to stop at 5. Okay, so we finished up here with giving our file a little bit more of a string type count. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add more buttons to control the language in our file. So I'm going to go to the file that I have completed. And the first thing you have to do is you have to select the very first keyframe in your ActionScript right here. Just follow along the book also. And we're going to tell our file that we want the primary language to be English. So you have to select that. You have to select the primary language, and in order to do that, you have to write var language string equals English. And it has to be in parentheses. Now this is telling our file that when your user first comes to this site, the language is going to be English. Now I'm going to go to the second keyframe right here, and you see that I have already set this in. Now if you go back to this file that you just completed, you're going to copy and paste this information that you have up on top, the info underscore text dot the animation has played positive string. So you're going to copy and paste this down here. As you can, let me just scroll this down and you will see, open this up a little bit too. So you're going to paste it right in here. Now you have to write, it's very case sensitive. If you don't write exactly everything correct in Flash, then it is not going to display correct. So we're going to tell this file, first we already told it that, the very first language that's going to be set is English. or else we have German. So with the German, we have die, ammunition. We actually wrote it out in a German text. And then the next is Spanish, and it's actually written out in a Spanish text. So you have to do all this to make sure this is correct. So follow along and write it in the book. And then underneath here, you have to write set language. Now, this is very important, very case sensitive, and it has to be written correctly. So when the function is called, it will now check to see if the language variable is set to English, which, like I said before, is the default because of the code you added. If the language is English, then the text will display in English. So now we're going to, after we get finished setting all these buttons and place them in, we have to actually put in the buttons. So the next thing you have to do is you have to drag the buttons. I'm just going to close this up for a second and move it out of the way. You have to drag the buttons on the stage. So I have a button here for English, a button here for German, a button here for Spanish. If you go into your properties panel, you have to make sure that you give your buttons an instance name, or else you're not going to be able to write your code. Very important. They already have a name. Each one of these buttons already have a name. Make sure you're on the button layer and you're on the very first keyframe. Bring each button out from the library. You just go to library, drag the button out. I'm just going to show you how to do it just so. Okay, so you see that I have adjusted the size of the button to make them smaller, to make them align correctly along the left, and make them easy to see against the gray here, the white against the gray. Then when you bring out the button, you have to give it an instance name. Now I've already done all this, so I'm not going to do it again. I'm just showing you how to drag these out. You drag each one out. You have the Spanish button, the German button, and the English button. Then you adjust the size. Make sure that you have your toolbar open. You can use this tool, the free transform tool. Hold down the shift key. I've showed you how to do all this different stuff in your, oops, you got to make sure that that doesn't happen. You have to hold the shift key down very carefully. Do it a little at a time. A little hard to do with this my laptop, but anyway, so you have the idea, and make sure that you give each one of these an instance name. Go back to the properties panel where it says instance name. You put the name English underscore button btn, the same for German and the same for Spanish. So you go through and do each one. Let's go back to the code now. Now we have to assign the buttons. We have to let them know that, we want the buttons to be functional. So underneath here, we have to set an event and an advent listener. Oops. You have to be careful. This program is so, wants to just cling to everything. I just open this back up so that you can see. Now, after we set the functions in for the language, now we have to set the buttons. Make sure you are on the buttons layer before you put the buttons in, and then you go to the ActionScript, you select each one, and you add an advent and listener. So the first one is English, so you just write mouse, event, click, set English, German, add event listener, mouse event, click, and then German, and the same for Spanish. And if you go through, now you have to set here for function. So we have to set English, mouse event void, English function, German, mouse event void, German, and Spanish. So you have to set each one. If you follow along in your book to write the code correctly. So the text will display in English first while the opening animation is playing. So you should be able to use the new buttons to switch the contents of the fields between English, German, and Spanish. So If you click the restart button, the currently selected language should retain until it is changed. So let's just take a look and see how this works. I'm just going to go to Control, Test, Test. Okay, so it's still, the emanation is telling you that it's 1 time, 2 time, 5 time, go all the way up to 5 time. We're going to go back to restart. We've completed this whole file. Let's just do this in German. See, the only thing that I would change if I was actually recreating this is you would have to change these, but oops, I guess this has to be 2O. So you will see that we also have to change the text. We have to assign the text also for the home page. So it's a little bit of work when you're working with these files, but as more you work with it, the easier it becomes. So I'm going to stop here because this is the end of lesson 2. This is a pretty long lesson, and we're going to go on in the third lection for Unit 2 will be creating animation with ActionScript, which is actually kind of fun. So I'm going to stop here